So welcome to Unit 2. We start off with the second unit of the college writing program today. We'll look at some of the overall rhetoric goals of Unit 2. We'll have some in-class discussion which will finish in the discussion section of the Blackboard after this class, after the lecture. We'll look at a map of activities you'll be doing for this for Unit 2, and a small note on critical reading, finally followed by homework. So I'm sure all of you remember this, the rhetoric triangle, where you as a writer are always changing your writing based on a certain context, and the context is the subject you're writing about and the audience you're writing to. So the example we'd used was, if you're writing about music to somebody who just likes listening to music, the way you would write that would be very different from a paper you're writing to a music teacher as part of a classroom exercise. So your reader and your subject always govern what you put into your writing. So to extend that a little bit, what we do in Unit 2 is you'll first be reading an essay, a critical essay, and you'll be responding to it academically. So when you're reading the essay, you are the reader, right? And the subject would be the essay that's been assigned to you, and the author who's written the program would be who's written the essay would be the writer of in this case, in the case of the rhetoric triangle here. So some things you might want to consider is the author. Yes, you are the one of her readers, but who was her wider audience? Who was her overall target audience? You and who else? And what was the broader subject that she was writing about? So if, for instance, we are looking at the essay regarding the pain of others, yes, it deals with war photography, but what are the broader topics it can be part of? So think of, if you had to take this essay and classify it in a library, you had to put it under a specific shelf, a subject shelf. What subject shelf would you put this essay under? Yes, so what is the writer's subject, who is their audience, and what is their overall context? Those are some things you want to keep in mind when you read your essay, read the essay that's assigned to you as part of Unit 2. So here's something we'll be doing as an in-class discussion. I have uploaded an image called text. It's ironic, it's an image called text, but basically it's an excerpt from a book that I've scanned. I've uploaded it under week 3. You'll find it under a file called text. So read this and identify 3 keywords associated with the text. So if you had to make a blog post and identify 3 tags, what would those 3 tags be? Or more simply put, what are the 3 most important words in your opinion in this uploaded text? Identify the sentence that in your opinion is the most important one, and finally summarize the whole text into 1 or 2 sentences. So it should be maximum 1 or 2 sentences, and there should be short sentences to medium length sentences. They cannot be very long sentences. So just again, read the uploaded document under week 3 called text. Identify the 3 most important words associated with the text. Identify the sentence that in your opinion is the most important one, and summarize the whole text into a paragraph, into 1 or 2 sentences. You can post this in the discussions area under week 3 class 2. A little note about the text. It's by this German writer called Judith. It's called Remote Islands of the World. What the author did was, she took a book that covers these islands extensively. So she covers 50 islands, and she read a book which was originally 800 pages per island. And she decided to explore the topic of these islands from a specific perspective. And the final book that she wrote about these 50 islands is about 75 pages long. And this includes pictures and images of the maps and of the islands themselves. So something to consider is, yes, she has summarized by understanding what the crux of the text is, but also when you're reading a text, if you want to talk about the text, you cannot talk about the text as a whole. That's going to be too unmanageable, especially if you're reading a big text, right? So select one specific perspective. So what this author has done about the Book of Islands is she's selected the perspective of myth. So sort of looking at the mythical perspective and stories which have a certain mythical resonance to them. She selected such imagery and such text, and then that's how she's created a shorter version of this bigger volume of text that she read. So two things that are important. One is select one big perspective from the essay that you'll be reading. I'll be assigning the essay next week, Tuesday, where the author talks about war photography from many different perspectives. So if you start responding to the essay by keeping all those perspectives in mind, you'll end up with one big unmanageable essay. So your response should be by selecting one of the many perspectives that she presents. We'll look at it more closely on how to select a perspective, but this is just to plant an idea in your mind. And also the ability to summarize. Summarize is not just blindly summarizing, but understanding what is the crux, what is the main meaning that the author is trying to convey, and then kind of summarizing that. In terms of the overall map of activities, you'll be reading Regarding the Pain of Others by Susan Sontag. If you have the Other Words book, you can start reading it already. If not, I'm going to scan the document and upload it into Blackboard next week. Your primary activities would be like a close interaction with the text, so selecting one big perspective and responding to that perspective. That's going to be your Unit 2, the output of Unit 2. The essay that you'll be writing is an academic response to Susan Sontag's essay. And then you'll also be doing a lot of generative and reflective writing to better understand, to flesh out your perspective. You do a lot of research as well to support your perspective. You can look at other resources. You can look at Sontag's essay. That I leave it up to you. But definitely it has to be a response to her essay. You can bring in other research if you like. And we'll be looking at the MLA formatting because that's the most accepted formatting methodology for all academic essays, for both bibliography and in-text citation. The essay, you will assume your audience to be an academic audience. It should be a conversation which is basically a blending of your own ideas with that of Susan Sontag. You will choose one big perspective or one big focus area and not cover every point in the essay, because otherwise, like I said, it will be an unwieldy, unmanageable essay. So focusing on a specific area or a specific perspective will make your essay seem more concentrated and focused. And the length of your essay, which will be an academic response to Sontag, like I said, would be about 4 to 5 pages, word pages. Because you'll be doing critical reading you'll be doing a critical reading of Susan Sontag's essay, I just wanted to summarize the 5th chapter of Penguin Handbook. Feel free to go and read it as well, but this is a good summary of what happens in that chapter. One thing you need to look at is what are the sources used. So Susan Sontag's essay will use a lot of sources, which she explicitly states in her essay. So look at what sort of sources the author has used. Based on the sort of sources the author has used, you can say a lot about what their perspective on the topic is. Look at how the content has been fleshed out. Are there just ideas, or are ideas supported by examples? Has every idea been supported by an example? So look at the close interaction between ideas and examples, and the distribution of these examples and the broad ideas. Look at how the outlining happens, which basically means how has there been a connection drawn between different passages. And what sort of trust do you as a reader have in the stance the author takes? Is the author just making broad sweeping statements without giving examples or proofs? Or is she actually using examples to illustrate her arguments? Is she providing you with sufficient analysis to actually buy in your trust? When you're responding to an essay, when you're having an academic response to an existing essay, it's very important that as you read actively, annotate key concepts, underline the key ideas, look at areas that intrigue and interest you the most, because then you can make that your one big perspective you respond to. See what kind of a personal connection you can draw, if you can connect it with some form of experience of your own. The essay is about war photography. Maybe you've not experienced or seen war in your lifetime, but then you can always connect it to some area in your life where you've experienced conflict on a smaller or a more personal scale. So try and see if you can have a personal sense of connection, and also look at how different passages, different paragraphs in the essays have been connected with one another, and then you can mimic that in a way when you are building your own essay, because if you mimic the paragraph structure and the interaction between paragraphs, you will see that your essay very closely resonates with the essay you're responding to. Look for potential fallacies in logic and emotion. when you talk about logical fallacies, one is content and one is connection. So if there is content is not supported, ideas are not supported by examples or proofs, then that's a logical fallacy. If you're if you're putting two statements next to each other without any logical connection between the two, that's a connection fallacy. So for instance, if I would say country A produces a lot of oranges, and in my next statement I say country A wastes their oranges, there is no connection drawn. On the surface it looks like yes, they produce a lot of oranges, maybe they waste their oranges, but there is no proof to show that there is actually a connection between the two. If I say country A produces a lot of oranges, it consumes 20% of it, exports 20% of it, and the remaining 60% is just thrown down the river, and then I make the statement it wastes most of its orange produce, then there is a logical connection there. Emotional fallacy, there is just one, which is identity elimination. So if I just stereotype a group and say this is how this group behaves, that need not apply to every single member of the group. So if I'm indulging in any exercise where I'm eliminating identity, individual identity, and saying this is how group A is and this is how group A behaves, then unless there is explicit proof for it, it is an emotional fallacy. This is for looking at photographs. So one is, it's called critical viewing. So composition, in a photograph, how have different elements been arranged? What is the primary subject and how has the subject been portrayed? What was your first impression of the picture and how do you relate it to the rest of the picture? And finally, what sort of values is the photograph trying to impose or give or narrate to the reader? So if you look at a war photograph, then that has its own inherent values. So how does the value of the photograph compare to the value of the reader or the viewer of the photograph? So for instance, if there's a war photograph that's trying to say that people who die in war are heroes, but you as a viewer think people who die in war are unfortunate because they've lost their lives so away from their hometown and the people, then that's the juxtaposing of the values of what the photo is trying to say versus your own personal values. So these are things you want to keep in mind when you're looking at a war photograph. This is an example of a war photo. So I would say pause the video at this point, read the slide again, and after you look at the critical viewing section, look at the photograph again and see how you can apply the concepts of composition, content, first impression, and values to this photograph. In terms of homework, observe the war photo. It's been uploaded under week 3 and has the name Infant Graveyards. There's a Blackboard assignment as well under week 3. It's called week 3 class 2, and that's the homework. And you can finish it. You can just respond to the class discussion there. To the assignment over there. Class assignments will be visible only to the student and to me, unlike class discussions. The deadline for finishing these is the 26th of June, that is before the next class. That's it for this class. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to email me. Thank you.